Hello and welcome to the first of Playsheet Podcast's team breakdowns for the 2021 NFL Draft. We're going to be looking at two teams every day in the run up to this year's draft to give you guys a primer for what they might be doing on the night. Now, there's a whole multitude of mock drafts, predictions, simulations, speculations, and hot takes which are out there. We're going to try to avoid that as much as we can and instead just give you an idea for the positional needs of each team, how those positional needs mesh with other teams' needs, and so what might ultimately be available on the board when it's their turn to pick. Now we're going to focus on the first three rounds of the draft because by the time it comes to day three and the later rounds, it's all very fluid and hard to analyse in advance with any conviction. We're going to do this alphabetically, so without any further ado, I'm going to jump straight into the Arizona Cardinals. Now the Arizona Cardinals enter this year's draft with only 5 picks. They have the 16th overall pick in the first round, the 49th overall pick in the second round, then they have a huge weight of 112 selections all the way to round 5. So how did they get here? They traded away their third round pick to the Oakland Raiders for centre Rodney Hudson, and then last year they traded their 2021 fourth round pick to the Houston Texans as part of a blockbuster deal that took DeAndre Hopkins to a desert. That fourth round pick has subsequently gone to the Patriots, but that's neither here nor there. The Cardinals don't have a third or a fourth round pick. So with very little draft capital, General Manager Steve Keim and Head Coach Cliff Kingsbury have no room for error or manoeuvre at all. They've had one of the busiest free agency periods of 2021, aside from perhaps the Patriots. They've brought in AJ Green, JJ Watt, Rodney Hudson, like I mentioned, but there still remain several positions of great need and which urgently need to be addressed in this year's draft. Those positions, in order, would be cornerback, running back, and tight end. And then aside from that, there's a secondary need to address the offensive line and the defensive line and add some more depth there. So let's look at those gaps. The Cardinals released Patrick Peterson and replaced him with Super Bowl 49 hero Malcolm Butler. But despite that, there's still no depth whatsoever in the position, and it's probably the area of highest need that the Cardinals have. They also released Kenyon Drake, leaving Chase Edmonds as the only experienced running back on the roster. There's a couple of rookies which are on there as well, but neither has touched the ball very much at all. So that's probably something that the Cardinals will be looking at. And then finally, they released starting tight end from last year, Dan Arnold, and again haven't replaced him. That leaves Max Williams as a de facto starter, but they only have 2 tight ends on the roster at this stage. Now, aside from that, like I mentioned, they brought in JJ Watt, obviously as an edge rusher. But if we look at the injury history of both him and Chandler Jones, who's the other player who's expected to get to the quarterback, both have been injured quite a lot over the last couple of seasons, so it definitely makes sense to bolster their pass rush. And with all teams in the league, they could also add some depth to the O-line if players are available. So picking at 16th overall, I think that the Cardinals only have one option in terms of the position to target, and that's cornerback. If they don't take a cornerback at 16th, I think they should trade back, and we'll go into why. At cornerback, there's 3 tier 1 players. 3 players who are seen as first half of the first round kind of picks. Those players in order would be J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, and Caleb Farley. Now, if we look at the teams in front of the Cardinals who potentially need a cornerback, you've got the Panthers at 8th overall, Cowboys at 10th overall, Eagles at 12th overall, and then it wouldn't be out of the bounds of possibilities for either the Vikings at 14th or the Patriots at 15th to also be looking at cornerback. So, by all chances, it's highly unlikely that JC Horn or Patrick Surtain will be available at pick 16. Assuming that Caleb Farley is still there, now you're getting a 6'2", 207-pound cornerback, so he's got the size, strength, and athleticism to make an impact in the National Football League. The question marks around him, though, are his durability. He missed the 2017 season due to a torn ACL, which should automatically be a red flag. He played poorly in 2018, coming back off that injury. He had a standout season in 2019, where he intercepted the ball 4 times, broke up 12 passes, but was playing with a bad back through that whole season. Sat out 2020 due to the COVID pandemic, and then had surgery earlier this year on that back injury. So he's a player who spent a lot of time on the medical table already. Had he not had this checkered injury past, it's likely that he would be going top 10 easily, but that's not the case. His floor, therefore, is probably a lot lower than what the other two tier 1 cornerbacks are. Now, he may not be available at 16, or the Cardinals may feel that he's too much of a risk. If that is the case, then I believe it would be sensible for the Cardinals to trade back. With the lack of draft assets they have, they could pick up some additional day 2 picks, some early day 3 picks, because there certainly are holes in their roster. Now, if they do pick up a cornerback in round 1, I don't see them going to tight end next. I see them going to running back next, probably. Reason being because Cliff Kingsbury does not value the tight end position. If we look at how the Cardinals' offense lined up last year, 20% of the time, 20% of snaps, they played with 4 wide receivers on the field. This is part of Cliff Kingsbury's air raid offense. Now, for context, the next closest team with 4 wide receivers on the field at any one time was the Bills, and they lined up that way 15% of the time. After the Cardinals and the Bills, no team had 4 wide receivers on the field for more than 5% of their snaps, 1 in 20 snaps. And there were 6 teams that actually only had 4 wide receivers on the field for 1 snap for the whole season. And those were probably Hail Marys. In a 10 personnel, which is 1 running back, 4 wide receivers, and no tight end, the tight end position is not valued because it's just not on the field as much as other teams have it on the field. And Cliff Kingsbury does not value the tight end position as much as some other coaches do. Now, that makes it all the more surprising to me that NFL analyst Peter Schrager, who someone I respect, came out in the last week with his mock draft and put forth that the Cardinals may trade a first this year, a first next year, and a 3rd round selection to trade up and take Kyle Pitts. I know that had quite a lot of it was clickbait. Quite a lot of people kind of got involved with that. That's probably the stupidest prediction that I've heard this year. It won't happen. The Cardinals will need to take a tight end at some point, but I'd probably say it won't happen till round 5, or if they do trade back and get some more assets, maybe somewhere in round 4 if they pick up one of those picks. But overall, looking at the Cardinals in this draft, look for them to take a cornerback early, and if they don't, look for them to trade back. That's the Cardinals.